Hello and welcome to the History of Bangalore. I am Ramjee Chandran here with you. And today I bring you Season 1, Episode 47 and Part 12 of my series on the Hoysalas. And this is the first of a two-part series on the end of that empire. At the end of the last episode, we saw the passing of Veera Ballala in 1220 AD, leaving behind a Hoysala kingdom at the peak, with its influence stretching across the Deccan west to the east. When his son Narasimha II ascended the throne, he inherited both the burdens and the ambitions of his father. But history, as we have seen, treats kings in one of two ways. It either fawns all over them or it trivializes them. And history marked Narasimha's 18-year reign as the beginning of the Hoysala's steady decline. The next 100 years would see the Hoysalas fighting to maintain their hold over the south, navigating the rise of powerful new enemies, shifting alliances, and finally, the dramatic downfall of the dynasty at the hands of the new force in the Deccan, the Sultanate. And all that is what you can expect over the next two parts. In this part, I will set you up for the beginning of the sunset of the Hoysalas. But before I get into that history, let me take a moment to thank the Prestige Group for their continued support of this podcast. Building cities, one landmark at a time, they transform dreams into reality. You can be a part of the future. Simply add prestige to your life. Okay, let's dive in with a bit of background. Around 1215, Ballala and Kuratunga Chola cemented a powerful alliance through marriage, each marrying the other's daughter, making them both father and son-in-law all at once. Following this close alliance, Ballala had used the Hoysala army to repel an invasion from the Pandya kingdom, and effectively this made the Cholas a subordinate state. But it came with new challenges for his son Narasimha, maintaining the control over the Chola kingdom, which meant having to defend them and their territory. The Pandya ruler Maravarman Sundara Pandya wasn't just about to accept defeat. Determined to regain his power, he clashed with the Hoysalas repeatedly over the following years, with mixed results. Around the same time, the Chola Empire began its own decline. After Kuratunga III was freed from Pandya control by Narasimha II, he, now aging, passed away in 1218. His successor, Rajaraja Chola III, was weak, and under his rule, the Chola Empire finally began to crumble. And as we'll see, this instability would continue to trouble Narasimha. The Cholas had become a protectorate of the Hoysalas, and now Narasimha was responsible for it, not the least because the two kingdoms were now close family. When Narasimha II ascended the throne in 1220 following Veera Ballala, his first preoccupation was logically to maintain his inheritance and fend off any threats to the kingdom. But lurking under the surface were some realities. As ambitious kings have discovered, when proverbially history is not remembered, acquiring a kingdom without a plan and the means to run it effectively simply means acquiring a headache. Becoming the arbiter of the South and the protector of the Chola kingdom comes with many great responsibilities, and it is not clear if Narasimha was up to the task. The task of not covering himself with glory in one area and letting others to rot. So let's look at it. For one, his preoccupation with the Cholas kept him from paying due attention to the northern territories, and the next years would see old foes, the Yadavas and the Sevanas, encroaching into Hoysala territory. But like his father, he seemed more interested in meddling in the political struggles of the Tamil country, and the difference being that for Veera Ballala, the alliance with the Cholas was a new opportunity and the subjugation of a new power center for themselves. Narasimha did nothing innovative. Maybe he simply was not a vision guy. And when the stakes are this high, the Hoysala Empire needed another visionary to continue the work of the previous one, and Narasimha simply was not his father. Every large enterprise either grows or it shrinks, and this is why the reign of Narasimha II marked the beginning of the end for the Hoysalas. Narasimha was plunged into action from the very start, and what follows now is a breathless rush of events, so stay with me. Almost immediately after his coronation, Narasimha saw himself marching into the east, the Tamil kingdom, several times. In 1221 AD, he attacked the Banas, who had occupied the Magadha territory, which is around Salem and North Arcot. It is said that he plundered them of riches and women, and significantly elephants. And I say significantly elephants because an inscription in Channagiri has elephants as Narasimha's principal motivation for this military campaign. It reads, saying, "What kind of title is Master of Elephants if I have no elephants under my command?" King Narasimha marched without rest for 100 Gavudas, crushed his powerful foes in the east, seized the 100 war elephants that Magadha, the Banas, had sent against him, and brought them back alongside his cavalry. Now, the exact length of a Gavuda is generally estimated to be between 12 and 16 kilometers. So when the inscription says that Narasimha marched for 100 Gavudas, it means he marched for between 1200 to 1600 kilometers. Clearly an exaggeration because even Kanyakumari is less than 750 kilometers from Halebeedu. Anyway, immediately after, he marched his army into South Arcot and defeated Koperunjinga of the Yadavas, but so ruthless was Narasimha's campaign that one inscription says that he sacked the temples and made off with several deities, obliging them to reconsecrate the temples. And all this must have been around 1224 for a time check. Now, Koperunjinga apparently was once a vassal of Kulothunga Chola III, and he wriggled his way into some sort of independence after the Pandyan attacks had weakened the Cholas. And now he decided to rise up, likely sensing a weak ruler like Rajaraja III. He battled and defeated him. Rajaraja tried to escape with his court retinue to Tellaru, a village about 30 kilometers south of Kanchipuram, where Narasimha had placed a cantonment to station Hoysala troops. This regiment was called the Berunda Regiment. But this Berunda Regiment could not stop Koperunjinga, who captured Rajaraja and took him away and held him prisoner at Sendimangalam. And once again it fell to Narasimha Hoysala to react, to spring Rajaraja from prison and reinstate him on the Chola throne. Some of this history is recorded on an inscription which is known as the Thiruvendipuram inscription. And I must make mention of this inscription because it's different from other South Indian records. It doesn't document a donation or a grant. Instead, it just tells a historical account, and that is unusual. When Narasimha learned that the Kadava, Koperunjinga, had captured Rajaraja and was holding him in Sendimangalam, he was very upset. And he declared, "This trumpet shall not be blown until I have maintained my reputation as architect of the Chola country." He then sent his top commanders ahead to finish the job. Those commanders, Appanna and Samudragopaya, led their forces through enemy-held lands. They wasted village after village on the way, and they even made a pious pit stop to pray at Ponnamangalam. And finally, they reached Sendamangalam, where, according to these generals, Koperunjinga gave up without a fight. And then it is said that they allowed Koperunjinga his kingdom and escorted Rajaraja back to the throne with due pomp and circumstance. This incident cemented the Hoysala influence in Tamil politics. And towards the end of these campaigns, Narasimha was so deeply ingrained in the politics of the area that he installed his 18-year-old son Someshwara as the governor of the region. And now Narasimha was a kingmaker, living up to his name as emperor. Or was he? On the one hand, Narasimha had been able to extract great wealth from the super-rich Tamil kingdoms. But on the other hand, his focus away from the real politics started to cause the cracks and eventual downfall of the Hoysalas. While Narasimha was grandstanding in the Chola country, the neglected northern territories looked like it was an easy target for their old foes, the Sevanas, who were the Marathas, and they tried to take advantage of Narasimha's long stays in the Chola country and decided to attack. The attack went badly for Krishna Sevana, who had planned to march into Dorasamudra or Halebeedu, plunder it, and bring down the Hoysalas all in one stroke. or so he thought. But in fact, Krishna's Maratha forces were beaten back across the Tungabhadra and they suffered major losses. One rather crude Hoysala record showed the severed heads of Sevana generals and featured random broken phrases in Marathi. Two matters of interest about this. One is that the Maratha forces included a contingent of Arab Turkish soldiers. And this was the second time that they had appeared in the Deccan, the first time being the poorly provisioned attempts by the Umayyad Caliphate to campaign the south. The other is that despite the repulsion of the Maratha Sevanas, something changed forever in the Hoysala kingdom. The heart and soul had gone out of it, and their days of glory were coming to a close. When Narasimha died sometime in 1239 AD, he left the throne to his son Someshwara. When I come back, the puzzling record about the death of Narasimha, was he killed in battle? Why the cover-up? I will be back in 30 seconds to tell you more, right after this.
Maximum connectivity, maximum luxury, maximum lifestyle. Live your max at Prestige Raintree Park. Opulent residences nestled in 21 acres of breathtaking landscape with 1 lakh plus square feet of clubhouse, 3 swimming pools and ample leisure and sports amenities. Experience exquisite living at Prestige Raintree Park in prime Whitefield with schools, offices, hospitals and shopping malls just a hop away. Call 81399 81399 or visit prestigeconstructions.com to know more. RADA approved.
The story of how Narasimha II died is mysterious. The Hoysala records say nothing about it, and some historical accounts speak of the king's age and illness, but there's another record from Andhra that tells a completely different tale, that he was killed in battle. And this comes to light from the account described in a book about Andhra history concerning the king Tikka, aka Gandagopalan. First, this and other records speak of Tikka ruling Kanchi in 1231. And this is conflicting with a Hoysala inscription that claims that Narasimha was ruling Kanchi in 1230. So clearly, one cannot rely on jingoistic assertions of the inscriptions of individual kingdoms. An inscription from Jambai or Sembai in the South Arcot district, dated to 1239, names a Nayanar Gandagopala, who is the same as the king Tikka, and the inscription reads, "In the month of Chitrai of that year, Nayanar Gandagopala was pleased to go out to fight, having stabbed Vallala Devan." Vallala Devan is without doubt Narasimha II. And so by this we conclude that Narasimha was killed in battle on April 14th, 1239, although the location remains unknown, and Someshwara ascended the throne of the Hoysalas. Well, that's one version. Some historians point out that Narasimha's last inscription was recorded in 1235 AD and then say that that must have been the year of his death. That's another version. And we may never know for sure, like most of ancient history. The possibility that Narasimha was killed by Tikka Gandagopala in battle appears to be true if you count the circumstantial evidence that Someshwara attacked him in retaliation a year after, in August 1240. Nothing major came of that battle, and nothing much has been said about it. Although Someshwara's reign was not packed with wall-to-wall action, there are a few moments in his history which are interesting from the perspective of events that unfold over the course of the next few centuries. For example, right from when he was born, it was interesting. One inscription recorded Someshwara's early years in this manner. To King Ballala and Padmala Devi was born a son, before whom Chera went calling, "Bravo, mind your steps, Deva," while the Chola king and the Pandya, one on each side, held his hands, the heroic Someshwara. This inscription is illustrative and might have been written to talk about how he was a child of the south. If we remember, Someshwara grew up in the care of his foster mother, Narasimha Hoysala's sister, Somala Devi, who had been given in marriage to an aging Kurutunga Chola III. Someshwara grew up in the Tamil kingdoms, and he saw a potential return to Dora-Samudra as something of an imposition. He did not want to leave his principality with which he had become comfortable. He understood the politics of the Tamil lands, and he was more comfortable with his role as a revenue generator for the kingdom than as a political leader. So even though he was crown prince, after Narasimha died, Someshwara continued to reign in Kannanur, and he didn't really move to Halebeedu. But why Kannanur? The choice of Kannanur as his capital was more a strategic decision for commercial reasons than one for military reasons. In terms of a defensible capital, Kannanur was not one. It lacked natural defenses. There were no hills or fortifications to shield it from attacks, and even the Kaveri was situated almost 5 kilometers to the south and offered no significant protection at all. But Kannanur was close to the rich and fertile Kaveri basin lands. There was also a military advantage, in fact. Its position along key trade routes made it a central hub for both commercial, and the flatlands made it easy for military movement. Its location was ideal for the encampment of a large standing army. The region had a large and teeming population which provided a ready source of recruits for foot soldiers, while the Karnataka and Tamil cavalry, mounted on Arab horses imported from the coast, added enough strength. And then, as part of the force, was the inclusion of Arab and Turk mercenaries, and probably some from the emerging Delhi Sultanate who may have wandered southwards to offer their services. This well-equipped and diverse force served as a kind of bulwark against the Pandyas and helped to thwart a resurgence of the Banas and the Yadava factions. But all this was not an antidote to Someshwara's political apathy. He messed up his relationship with the Pandyas and the Cholas, shifting his favor to the Pandyas once and then back to the Cholas again. And this only increased the resolve of Rajaraja III to be rid of the Hoysalas, even if he owed them his freedom and, in fact, his entire kingdom. So the years between his coronation and almost the year 1250 saw Kannanur being the center of gravity of the Hoysalas and not Dorasamudra. And this decade was marked by a weak ruler with a lot of infighting among the top Hoysala officials and a generally undignified administration. By the mid-13th century, Rajendra Chola III had taken over from his father Rajaraja, and by all accounts would have been the better king, but for the insistent meddling of Someshwara. And that was a man he addressed as Mamadi or Mama, which means maternal uncle. But uncle or otherwise, and the otherwise being father-in-law, on the possibility that he had married his maternal uncle's daughter, which is a permissible relationship outside the norms of incest, and so the whole thing becomes very messy. So uncle or otherwise, his relationship with the now ailing Someshwara took a dive, and over time grew to a level of hostility. He needed to carry none of that great amount of respect and loyalty that his father did. He was the new generation. On his part, Someshwara did not show any special favors to his nephew either, and he started to court the Pandyas. At one point, his title went from Scatterer of the Pandyas to Savior of the Pandyas. And one proof of that was when Rajendra sent an army into the Pandya territory without informing Mama. Someshwara immediately sent his forces to intercept the Chola forces. One account suggests that the ease with which the Hoysala forces campaigned inside the Pandya kingdom was evidence that there had been some sort of backroom negotiations between them. And in all this time, Someshwara had not once shown an open hostility towards Rajendra, and both the Hoysala and the Chola records of the time made no mention of any tensions between the two. But that changed soon, when the hostility came tumbling out and Rajendra took to calling himself the rod of death to his uncle and boasted that he had defeated his uncle and put on him the anklets of a hero, which means that he had made his uncle his servant. And that was perhaps the last pair of anklets or shackles that Rajendra Chola had put on anyone, because soon after this, the Cholas were consumed entirely by the Pandyas, and they ceased to exist as an empire. In or before 1254, Someshwara sensed that his end was near. He also came to the conclusion that it was not efficient or feasible anymore to manage a kingdom that stretched from the Tungabhadra to Madurai under a single ruler. Things were getting messy in the day. It was not like the old days. And the north was coming under constant threat from the Yadavas, and in the south from the Pandyas, who were on a roll. So, Someshwara split the Hoysala kingdom. He crowned his two sons, both kings. In the south in Kannanur, he placed his son Ramanatha as the king, and in the north, with the traditional headquarters being Dorasamudra or Halebeed, he placed his other son Narasimha III as the king. And the two princes were crowned kings, and now the Hoysala kingdom ran under the principle of three umbrellas: father, son, and son. Inscriptions are typically silent or at most evasive about the death of a king, and it falls to us to figure out what happened, and sometimes we can figure that out from the records of the winners. When the death is by natural causes, illness, or by palace coup, such as what probably happened to Vikramaditya II of the Vatapi Chalukyas, the inscriptions are silent and we can only go by assumptions. In the case of Someshwara II, the only Hoysala inscription that makes mention of his death is the mass suicide of a general, Kannaiya Nayaka, who, with 3 wives, 10 maids, and 21 man-servants, fulfilled his engagement with Someshwara. This means they all fulfilled the vow that they had taken, that they would die with him. In a Shakespearean twist, though, it appears that they had made this rash move on the presumption that Someshwara would not survive a terrible illness that he had been suffering. But after this mass suicide, the king recovered. In another theory, Someshwara was killed in battle by Jatavarman Sundara Pandya anywhere in the years 1254 and after. A Pandya record issued in 1263 showed that Jatavarman had taken the Hoysala capital Kannur, and he had started jostling Ramanatha Hoysala for space. It probably meant that each of them had a portion of it. But what it did say was that it was the end of Someshwara. I always try to end the description of the reign of a king by a measure of what he brought to history. And in this case, if Someshwara's father, Veera Ballala, had given the Hoysalas independence in the sovereign nation, Someshwara, for all his shortcomings, had brought forth a new era of skill in diplomacy and statecraft. And this is something that was needed because politics had started to become a little more sophisticated. When Arab and Turkish forces started shaping Deccan politics, Someshwara saw the need to play the game differently. And say what you like about his competence, hindsight, as they say, is always 20/20. The next episode will be a quick lead up to the end of the Hoysala Empire and the last hurrah of Veera Ballala III and the entry of the Sultanate. And that paves the way for the entry of the Vijayanagara kingdom as we inch towards the end of season 1, 4 short episodes away. Stay tuned as we will soon enter a totally new phase of history. I am Ramjee Chandran, and this is the history of Bangalore.